have none other than former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith on the line with us. Special good morning and welcome to you, sir.
Good morning to my favorite station. How are you?
I am glad that Tobago updates is your favorite station. I am great and wonderful to hear you and see you.
Likewise.
Now, I want to get your take on what's been going. What's the deal with this human trafficking report from the U.S. State Department? First of all, just to put it into perspective for the viewers who are watching and don't quite they're hearing these terms being put out there, but just to put it into perspective, what is it?
Well, what it is and what we are seeing is yet again politicians, instead of trying to focus on getting the job done, we are involved in finger pointing, and it does not help the country. It is a very sad state of affairs. We are being laughed at by our international allies. Instead of us just doing what is required, the blame game definitely does not work. Trying to point fingers to try to state, well, it was you, no, it was you. We have a situation where we have been downgraded for the last 8 years. And how it works in human trafficking, the US has a threshold from tier 3, then you can move up to tier 2 watch list, then tier 2, and then tier 1. In 2013 to 2015, under the People's Partnership Administration, when I was Minister of National Security, there were a number of things that the US demanded that we put in place to have ourselves upgraded from tier 2 watch list. This is what I did, where it is I established the Child Protection Unit, improved and expanded the Human Trafficking Unit, signed security cooperation agreements between Colombia and Venezuela, started being involved in making sure that there was proper funding for NGOs and making sure that there was that persons can be prosecuted and if not arrested. And all of these things ensure that for the first time in a long time, we were upgraded from tier 2 watch list to tier 2. On my departure, all of these things that I put in place, they were disbanded. They did not put the emphasis on it. And 3 ministers of national security under the PNM, and 8 years later, we got downgraded back to tier 2 watch list. So the fact is that there are a number of things that could be done. Instead of us pinpointing on this one thing, if it was him and no, it was them, and we have put more emphasis on exaggerated to a point that we are not trying to deal with the main issues. Now, having said that, I find it really alarming that now we are seeing people jumping out of the woodwork stating that, yes, they were aware of this situation. It may give the impression that you're trying to take advantage of this, because why did you say this all the time? You were aware of this, and now all of a sudden you're saying I was propositioned and this and that. I was the Minister of National Security, and at no time was there any intelligence that came to the attention of my desk of any aspect of either government or opposition that were involved in, that would have been involved in human trafficking. As the Commissioner of Police from 2018 to 2021, there was no such information or intelligence that came to our desk of anyone holding office in government or opposition involved in human trafficking. Now, there is a difference with human trafficking and possible escort service or prostitution. That, however, is also a crime. But this was a lot of the information that I would have been hearing is based on hearsay. You cannot arrest someone or charge someone based on hearsay and rumor. I find it also very interesting and informative that the Commissioner of Police has selected a special team to launch an investigation on this, which actually is correct. Because if you have this being passed about in public domain, you should do it. What I find alarming is that both Mr. Jacob and Earl Christopher have not launched a special team to investigate the biggest scandal that has taken place in Trinidad and Tobago's politics in the last 10 years, of a president not adhering to the law and a senior government official not trying to report of that person influencing a public official to act as it pertains to misbehavior in office, where it is a merit list was pulled back. So it is always exciting to see that commissioners of police, they will rush forward to launch an investigation. And in contrast to Mr. Jacob, when he said that that someone must submit a report, no report has been submitted on this, but the Commissioner of Police has rightly launched an investigation. Why has she not launched an investigation where the minutes of the Police Service Commission will emphatically show that at no time did the Police Service Commission suspend the Commissioner of Police or withdraw a merit list, which meant for a fact that a law was broken, and she has not launched a similar team. So, sometimes it gives the impression that the police are being manipulated and intimidated.
I want you to give us an idea of what kind of human trafficking are we talking about that's happening within our country, based from your knowledge and your experience leading the police service and from the intelligence that you would have gathered over the years.
It is a very serious matter, but unfortunately, we believe that the only aspect of human trafficking involves young girls who become prostitutes and they come in on a boat late at night and then land. It is much more than that. It is very difficult to deal with. Headed. I was the head of certain investigations and operations where we raided a number of different institutions, and you will find big hardback men, and they will be there, and their defense is that they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They went to get a drink. We'll see many young girls who may be illegal immigrants, and they will state that they were just by the pool having a good time. So it is always very difficult to target these individuals and have them arrested for aiding and abetting in prostitution because it's difficult to find witnesses. And then the only thing that comes out is that these same young people now you might try to deport them. So it is a very serious matter. But what happens is that there's also the concern of trafficking as it pertains to the abuse of the individual for financial benefit. If you recall, a few years ago, I led an investigation that released 63 persons, mostly elderly, who were in cages, 6 foot by 6 foot. They were in shackles. We found tasers. And there were people in this country that were upset that I was able to release these people. That is what we have reached to, where we become not just sympathetic, but we seem to have agreed to this type of trafficking. And the media had the audacity to question whether it was known as trafficking. It was trafficking. Trafficking is not just about sexual manipulation of a minor. And in addition to which, there's also the concern of trafficking, where we have it confirmed there are 120,000 persons who have entered our country and not left. And they have extended they have overstayed their time. That means they are all illegal immigrants. A lot of them will be from the Philippines, the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, and many of them what happens is that they come in here. Some of them are influenced and to be given jobs, and then they are told you'll get the most atrocious conditions, you'll get below the minimum wage, and that is also a form of human trafficking. 120,000, that is 20% of the adult population. So these people, they do not pay taxes. They are forced to work in, again, as I said, atrocious conditions, below the minimum wage. All of that is part of human trafficking. So we need to expand and stop thinking it is just about prostitution. And then what happens, even if it is that my concept as a Minister of National Security was to regularize these individuals, have them registered to prevent them now from being abused, threatened, and blackmailed by their employers, because that's what they do. And then by doing that, this would have generated an income of over 2.5 billion TT annually into our economy. And it would have played a big part to reduce human trafficking and abuse and the reduction of exploitation of these foreign persons who have entered here under the wrong reasons. So all of that is what we have to do and try to deal with. But instead of all of this, we have a government pointing fingers to say that you are involved, and the opposition is saying, no, it is not us. That is why we have been downgraded, because we have politicians who do not understand how to do their job.
Government is at all serious about tackling human trafficking?
Well, no, obviously not. I mean, as I said, after 2015, we had 3 ministers of national security. 8 years later, we have been downgraded. And the things that we would have put in place in 2013 to 2015, speaking about trying to ensure we work with NGOs, we try to put awareness campaigns, we provide the funding for these NGOs, security cooperation agreements with the countries where a lot of this will take place. That's more so Colombians and Venezuelan persons, trying to make sure persons are arrested, establishing the human trafficking unit, the child protection unit. Those are the things you have to be proactive, get the job done, just do what is required. But instead, we go back to you are in government, and for 8 years you're still blaming the opposition for your failures. And the only way this can stop is that the removal of this government. There is nothing against the PNM, but the hierarchy of the PNM have shown to be totally clueless in dealing with all aspects of national security, inclusive of human trafficking. And I find it is very unfortunate that they've spent more time babbling about somebody in the opposition who may be involved, and it is something that should be investigated, I agree, but why? What about all of the other things that could and should have been done that because of your failure to implement it, you have caused us to be downgraded after I put so much in place that caused us to be commended by the US government in 2014 to cause us to be upgraded?
In a situation where it seems as though the police is not ready at this point in time to handle it, and they are not supported by the legislation or the government, is there anything that the small part of the concerned population can do to fight against human trafficking?
Well, yeah, again, it goes back to trying to find proper systems and policies to ensure that there's a proper communication system between the public and the police service. Citizens are not going to come in a police station over a counter and make a report. That is why I had online reporting, app reporting, um, having a direct link to myself. People wanted to give information, which is why public trust and confidence in the police service moved from 14% in 2018 to 55% at the end of 2021. Unfortunately, I think we've gone back to about 14%. That public, the information from the public plays a very big part. Many of the raids that I led would have been because of tips that I had, and we went to these establishments that are known as guest houses, but they're really brothels. One of the avenues that I tried to do to put an end to it was to take their bar license, because by removing the bar license, it meant that the brothels would be closed down. We had the confirmation of 73, mostly in central, southern, southwestern peninsula, and that is what they use as the fronts. And again, unfortunately, because of the few rogue elements in the police service, we had police officers that would be covering and protecting these brothels. And most of these would have minors from foreign countries who are here illegally, overstayed their time, and because of that, they are now forced to work atrocious conditions, being involved in prostitution, being with dozens of people on a daily basis, and then being told, well, you have to stay and do this, or else we will report you to the authorities and you will be sent back to that country that you were in, and you certainly don't want to. And that is what, so one of the avenues I used was to ensure that the bar licenses, when it came up for renewal, would be revoked. I'm speaking to the relevant members of parliament, getting signatures from members of the constituency, telling them, all of them, get hundreds of signatures to state that this area, it is a form of drug dealing, human trafficking, littering. You have a lot of criminal activities that take place, so the bar license will be revoked. That is what would have been done had I remained as Commissioner of Police, because I sent that out about the middle of 2021. Unfortunately, Keith Rowley, because of his pettiness, decided otherwise. And because of that, these bar licenses are now being renewed because of these specific few rogue elements in the police service that are not going to do their job, or the Commissioner of Police who decided to shut down over 100 policies that I put in place to reduce crime in this country, inclusive of that.
In other words, the government is enabling human trafficking at this point in time.
Well, yeah, it is because they have failed to have the political will and to do what is required. If it is you have a commissioner of police who was selected based on a proper system, and not persons who in the police service commission who may just decide to do their own thing to please those persons politically who appointed them. If it is that you have a government that does not have and select a Minister of National Security who has proven to be the most ineffective minister in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, because they are all unable to know how to be proactive, how to deal with predictive policing, how to deal with trying to just get the job done, but spend more time in using resources, tools, equipment, and funding to attack and target political opponents. That is the cause of concern. So for people to believe that it cannot be turned, if we turned it around in 2013 to 2015, we were upgraded, we were upgraded by the US and commended for our work in reducing human trafficking. Now it is just the opposite. We are going downhill, and it could probably get worse if we do not deal with the problem. We could very well be even downgraded to tier 3.
Now, I want to move on to this claim or this promise from our current Commissioner of Police, Mr. Christopher, that we will have a reduction in murders by June. Now, is this goal ambitious?
It is very optimistic. I would hope that every law-abiding citizen will hope that she can achieve it. It is hope that every law-abiding citizen will support her in her desire. And unfortunately, it is more of an optimistic view than a realistic one. The data is there. When I became Commissioner of Police, I inherited a continuation of increase in crime from 2015 to 2018. So because of that, it would have been virtually impossible for me to turn around crime in my first year, because of what I experienced and what I inherited. And because of that, it took a while for me I had to transform the police service, turn it around to get the moral and motivation to be lifted, to get the public confidence and trust to move from 14 to 55%, and to put 100 plus policies to implement, to deal with systems, to measure performance of police officers, make them accountable, and to provide the deterrence to ensure that the criminals can be pegged back. The results showed after about a year. And from that, in my last 18 months, you would have seen the highest reduction in every violent crime in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. My last year, it would have been August 20 to August 2021, was 342 murders. That is the lowest number of murders in 20 years. And it showed that we can very well do it. So what she's saying is true. But as I said, it took me a year. McDonald Jacobs inherited this, and he somehow miraculously was able to transform from inheriting the highest reduction in crime in history. He turned it around to the highest spike in crime in history in his last year, from 342 murders to over 600. So it shows that the person who holds the office has a very big part to play in the transformation of the police service and crime reduction or crime increase. So having said that, she has now inherited the highest spike in crime in our country's history, thanks with McDonald Jacob playing a part. So with her having received that, it is going to be virtually impossible to transform it overnight and within 3 months. What is more alarming is these people who call themselves criminologists. I have heard Dr. Randy C. Prasad. It is the most ridiculous comments I have ever heard. He is trying to say that it can very well work because of what is known as secondary crime prevention. Secondary crime prevention involves avenues for young persons, especially, to turn themselves away from a life of crime. Now, criminologists in this country use that because they do not have a clue as it pertains to the primary aspect of reducing crime, which is known as primary crime prevention. That involves hard targeting, deterrence, measures to peg back criminal elements, make life difficult, and take away the product of opportunity. Measuring performance and accountability for police officers. That is primary crime prevention. That is what I use. I went after the criminals, went after them hard, pegged them back. Because the criminologists do not understand that, they turn to Project Hope, Project Reason, Project Building Blocks, and all of these are known as secondary aspects to try to win hearts and minds and turn persons away from a life of crime. This criminologist, Randy C. Prasad, had the audacity to mislead the country to state that it was because of such projects that caused the massive reduction in crime when they had these projects from 2014 to 2017. I could show that what he's talking is total nonsense, because up until 2013 to 2015, it was the highest reduction in serious crime in history, and it had to do specifically because of the hard targeting measures I enforced as the Minister of National Security. In 2015, after I left, Minister Dillon did not enforce such policies, and the same Project Pride and Project Hope and Project Building Blocks and Project Reason and all of these projects that they love to call to sit down and talk with young persons. How come he said that this went on until 2017, but from 2015 to 2017, we saw a massive spike in crime yet again? So these secondary aspects are long-term. You only start seeing that after years. To have an immediate impact in crime, you've got to go after the criminals. You've got to press hard. You've got to fight fire with fire. You've got to peg them back and let them put the fear into law enforcement whilst adhering to the law. So that is what the Randy C. Prasads and them, they are giving the country a false sense of hope, but it is how our criminologists are. They do not do research, they do not do data, and they babble things because of what they are only fully aware of. So unfortunately, as much as I would love to believe that Lola Christopher, she has good intentions, it is going to be very difficult, especially because of what she inherited from McDonald Jacob with the highest spike in crime in our country's history.
From what you've seen so far, has she tried, or is she doing anything that you would see that would be effective in trying to achieve this goal?
Well, there would be covert and overt operations that need to take place. So there will be covert operations. Obviously, you will not have you should not bring forward to the public. But like myself, there were a number of overt operations and initiatives and policies that I implemented that made it known, such as the formation of the Special Operation Response Team. That was shut down by Jacob, and he replaced it with a National Operation Task Force. We recall what SWAT did. SWAT stopped, put an end to kidnapping. They dealt with arresting and shutting down a number of drug blocks, criminal elements. The new unit that has been formed in the last year, their biggest success has been to arrest an old lady for selling school books on the side of the road. And nothing against these officers, but it is because of lack of leadership and direction. You need to have that elite unit similar to SWAT, a highly tactical trained unit with intelligence gathering being pumped directly to them for them to go after the criminal elements. This unit was also heavily involved in predictive policing. They stopped dozens upon dozens of murders from happening. So there are things that you can do from IT, technology, the Operation Command Center, the Commissioner's Command Center. So there were over 50, 60 policies that were very overt that I implemented, and it was known to the public. She has not yet established one. She has not stated one of these operational, tactical, hard-targeted law enforcement policies she intends to to pursue. If there are covert aspects, obviously that wouldn't be known to the public. So if she wants to keep it close to her chest, that is her right. But the results people would expect to see results. It is also very I don't know if it's coincidental. She's supposed to retire in May, but she stated that in June she expects to see the results. So I don't know if that is just a coincidental number. But when you give a figure to say in June you're going to reduce crime, what it is that you did to measure this? Why not March? Why not September? Why not next year? How do you come about with June? And she has not answered these questions. But as I said, it must not be seen as criticism, but I think it is more optimistic than realistic. We would love for it to happen. I ask the public to support her to ensure that it happens. But as I said, after inheriting the highest spike in crime thanks to the ineffective leadership of McDonald Jacob, it is going to be very difficult for her, if not impossible.
It's easy for us to look at some of the murders that are happening and just be like, it's just some delinquents on the street that's getting up to no good, getting themselves up involved in gang activity and so on. But we all know that oftentimes there is something larger, the larger force behind a lot of the criminal activity. I mean, what do you know about what's driving it and what's allowing it to grow and fester into such a massive problem in Trinidad at this point in time?
It is known as a product of opportunity. That is what crime is. Crime is a product of opportunity. The greater the deterrent, the less likelihood persons would commit crime because they know there's a greater chance of them being apprehended. And not just for violent crime, it involves money laundering, white collar crime. You put proper systems in place, which is what I did when I was able to amalgamate the different arms of the police service because they were in silos operating, not working side by in synergy with each other. So the white collar crime unit, the FIB, the cyber crime unit, the ACIB, brought them all together under the white collar crime unit, to ensure that we can deal with that type of crime. Likewise, if it is that we don't put those systems in place, the criminals will now see the product of opportunity. So up until August 2021, the criminals were fearful. They didn't know you'll be hearing. Anytime you will see police officers, you'll figure it was the commissioner with his boys. We were put in everywhere we turned. We were able to make sure we would put a dent on criminals and peg them back using a lot of technology, the establishment of the social media unit, monitoring and looking and pinpointing what may take place in the very near future that prevented dozens upon dozens of murders from taking place by intercepting the individuals on their way to assassinate someone. That is the type of action that is required. If those things do not take place, the criminals will start feeling emboldened. They will remember up until August 2021, there was no such thing as home invasion. Now, because they knew a criminal will know that if he does something within seconds, because of the operational command center, because of a proper 999 system, because we had the emergency response patrol with 90 vehicles plastered throughout the country 24 hours a day, which meant that if someone called 999 within 5 minutes maximum, you will have a response. Because the criminals know that that is no longer there, they believe they could jump over a wall, break into a house, rob someone, take something, and walk back out, and you're not going to get a response in within half an hour. So the product of opportunity is there, and that is what has caused these criminal elements to now step back out and take control. Unless we fight fire with fire, we use technology, we use the type of policing that is done worldwide, we use predictive policing, it is going to cause the criminals to continue to invade the privacy and the rights of the law-abiding citizens.
So much, Mr. Griffith, for just giving us your insight. Of course, your insight is always very valuable, and we always appreciate you coming on to speak with us.
My pleasure.